Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Beyond the Sewing Room. I'm Diane. I hope you're all doing really well today. So today I'm going to share with you how to copy a hoodie. So I'm making a gift hoodie for my husband. So we're in December at the moment and I feel like I've only got a few more days left to do this. Way he's not going to be home, so I need to get on with it. I thought I'd show you what I'm going to do. So I've done a few copying pattern videos before, copying your garments. I've done one on t-shirts, underwear and so on. So I thought I'd do this one because this is quite common that we all like to wear hoodies, especially in the winter. So this one, got hair in my face. This one is a Converse one that he's had for some years now. He likes the hoodie, it's a good fit. The only trouble is it's quite thin. So while it's a nice fit and he's comfy in it, this particular sort of fleecy sweatshirty fabric is not very warm for this time of year, so he doesn't tend to wear it very much. He tends to wear it more in the summer. And he does like the blue. He likes pretty much the same kind of colours. He likes blue, denim blue, that kind of thing, grey. So I've got him another blue. It does look very similar on camera. I'll show it you in a moment, but it is quite different. This one has got the Converse badge on, obviously. It's got a zip up the front and it's got the drawstring in. I'm not sure whether I'm going to put the drawstring in or not. I could do. I've got the eyelets and I've got one, but doesn't tend to use it, and he did ask for me to leave it out of his other hoodies, so I might just do that. So we'll see about that. But yeah, I'm just basically going to be cutting around it, so I'll show you how I do that. This particular sweatshirting fabric that I bought quite recently on a trip to Annie's in Sheffield on Abbeydale Road was quite wide. So this is on the fold here, look, and it is wider than usual. So I'm quite confident that I've got enough there. I only actually bought 1.5 meters of this, but I knew it was extra wide. So do bear that in mind when you're buying your fabric. So it may be best to lay out the hoodie that you're about to copy and just take a tape measure, make a mental note of the different widths of the fabric that you think you might be buying. So if you're going to have a look online, note it down first of all, and just maybe have a little play around with it on the floor on a tape measure before you send off your fabric or buy your fabric, because you don't want to buy too much and then end up with loads of waste. So that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to lay that out, show you how I do it, and let's get on with it. So here I've got my hoodie laid out on my table. So I've got my fabric here on the single fold. So this is going to be the back that I'm cutting out for now. So I've put the sleeves into the middle. You need to really push in the shoulders here because we really need to see where this line is for the back mark, and we're going to add on our seam allowance, so that can be whatever you prefer. So you may have a tool that you like to mark this with. I just tend to do it by eye. This bottom bit is the rib, but I'm going to be using the same fabric for the rib, but what I will need to do is only cut it to there, and then I will cut the rib out separately from the main fabric, or rather the rib part, and also the pocket. So we're cutting out the back piece first of all. So what we need to do is make sure that we have an idea of where the back seam will fall. So if you mark it with pins like this, or chalk if you wish, but chalk can rub off, so sometimes it's easier to do it with pins. And we'll do it on both sides, but what we'll need to do is we'll need to even it out in a moment to make sure that they're both identical. So if you let it fall where it falls, look, you're pressing it with your fingers. So that's the line, or the curve. And then my seam comes all the way out to here. So I want to add on the allowance in a moment. So that's one side. This is the bottom, where the rib will attach. And do the same all the way around. Now we've got this basic outline in either chalk or pins now, and we're going to cut around it. But when you cut around it, make sure that you do add on your seam allowance. So I'm going to do that now. So I have my basic shape. Now just fold it in half and check it's even, and if it's not, like it's not quite even just here, look, just a little bit out. Just trim a little away, just to make sure that it's even on both sides. Other than that, that's pretty much okay. So that's the back piece, and now we want to do the front pieces in the same way. Now this time you want to fold your fabric because we're going to be doing two pieces at mirror image. Again, open out your hoodie like this so that you can feel for all the places where your seams are. And again, either with chalk or pins, mark out where your seam line will go. Again, when you get to the top here, you'll need to really press into it to find the curve. You can actually push your pins through like this on the tricky areas. Flip it back and chalk mark on top of the pins. That might make it easier for you. Now when you're cutting out your sleeve, you want to lay them on the fold like this. Again, bear in mind that this bit's going to be cut out from rib, so you don't need that bottom bit. Lay it on the fold. Again, add in your seam allowance when you're cutting round it. And just be quite generous with the scoop here, because you're going to need a little bit more for the scoop at the back generally than you would at the front. Some of them are cut identical, but mostly you will allow a little more. So just be a little bit generous, and then we can even that up after. And if you are doing it that way with a more generous scoop at the back, you'll need to make sure that you flip it over before you cut the other sleeve so that you've got a mirrored pair. So now we're going to do the hood. So again, you want it pressed down flat, and you want the material or the fabric on the fold. Now if you want to do a lining for it, you're going to cut 2 out in the main fabric, and then you can cut another 2 out in a contrasting colour or a lining. Now finally, I've cut out my pocket pieces. Make sure that you do these on the fold again so that you get a pair. And also my rib for the bottom, this you need to make sure that you cut it sort of this width way is the most stretch of the fabric. So I've just done it as one long piece. I've measured it with the bottom. But what you'll want to do is, once you have it all made up, take a little bit off so that it gathers in a bit. So for now I've just cut it to this size, and then we can adjust after. And do the same with the cuffs. So the cuffs, you want to cut them so that they'll fold up like this, unless you're using a ribbing fabric. So you could use rib instead, and that will give you more stretch if you're going to be pulling your sleeves up a lot and so on. You'll never get as much stretch from doing it in the stretch sweatshirting as you would from the rib. Now the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to sew around our pockets. Now when you add your pockets to your fronts, they're going to go to the edge here and also into the bottom seam where it will meet the rib at the bottom. So you know that you're placing it on in line with this seam and this corner at the bottom. So that's quite easy, you don't need to mark it at all. But we do need to prepare them first. So we need to sew the top, and we also need to sew around the curve here and down the side of the pocket here. The front bit and the bottom part are just left raw because they're going into seams. So you might want to overlock that first of all, or zigzag finish it before you hem it. So pin back the curve of your pocket like this. And then if you make sure that you place your pins in from the right side, you can stitch it from the right side, so you can top stitch it. This just makes it a little bit neater. Now pin the pocket to the front of your hoodie like this, and we're going to stitch it in place. So I've put both pockets on, and as you can see, I've made sure that they line up. So just check that they do meet in the middle and that they're even. And also at the corners here and here, I've gone over with a diagonal, and that's just so that it gives it a bit of extra strength when you're putting your hand in and out. Now with right sides facing, you're going to place both front pieces on your back piece like this and pin them at the shoulder. We're going to stitch them in place using whatever seam allowance you allowed when you were cutting around your pieces. Now take your sleeve piece, fold it in half like this, find the halfway point at the top, but bear in mind you've got a bigger scoop at the back, or at least I had on mine anyway. Most of them do, to allow for the shoulder and the way that your arm moves. So here we have got, so this is more than the front. We have, let's have a look, do that in centimetres instead of inches. 2.5 centimetres. So if you mark 2.5 centimetres on your sleeve, that is your new shoulder point. And this part that has got more is your back. So mark that with a black pin, so remember that this part is the back. Open up this jacket. This is the back here, with right side facing. We're going to line that up. So the back part of the sleeve goes to the back part of the jacket. Line this top part up with the shoulder, open up that seam. You can zigzag or overlock finish this. I'm just leaving it raw for now. I may add some binding after to finish my seams. I'm not putting it through the overlocker because I do feel it's quite thick. Pin this in place, and then we're going to stitch that sleeve in position once it's pinned all the way around. And I'm stitching now the underarm seams, the sleeves and the shoulders, and where I'm adding in the sleeves here with a very small zigzag stitch. So a very slight zigzag stitch, and I've made my stitch smaller just to allow for a bit of stretch in that area. Now pin down the side, the underarm, and all the way down the sleeve like this. Again, use a stretch stitch or a zigzag stitch for this part. Now the hood, you're going to place them both right sides together like this. You're going to sew around this outer curve. Then when you've done that, you can top stitch it down each side just to keep these two parts of the seam down flat. So you just open up that seam, and then from the right side just sew up either side of it with top stitching. Just make sure it stays open. Now from the outside, look, it looks like this. Right, so if you're putting a cord in your hood, we're going to do that now. So I've made my eyelets. Now if you haven't got any of these, you could just do a little buttonhole opening at this point. I've folded back the allowance for the casing for the cord. So I've folded it back like this, and I've pinned it all the way around, and now I'm going to stitch it in place. You may find it's quite tricky to stitch here. You might want to do a few hand stitches if you've got a large eyelet in there. Now push your cord through your eyelet and your casing that you've just made. You can use a large safety pin for this. Now mark the centre back of your back piece, and then line that up with the centre here of your hood. Then at the front you want to leave enough so that you can fold it back to add in your zip. So make sure that's the same seam allowance on either side, so that when it folds back it will be flush in line with the casing of your hood here. Pin that all the way around and stitch in place. Now fold your cuff like this lengthways. Make sure you've got the stretch going that way like I said before when you cut it out. You're going to sew it down the side. Now I've cut my seam allowance, well, I've made my seam allowance really small on these because there wasn't that much left with the stretch going that way for my cuffs. But I've managed it, so I've just made the seam allowance a little bit smaller. Now to attach your cuff to your sleeve, you want to find the halfway point. So here's the seam, here's halfway. Just give it a little snip, just there. Then get your sleeve, pop the cuff over it like this. You want to line up that seam there with this one here. And then the halfway point of the sleeve and the cuff at this side also need to line up. So to ease in the sleeve, you just want to pull on the cuff a little as you're stitching it in place. So just make sure you pull on the band a little while you're easing in the hoodie part. Now I've changed to my zipper foot and I'm applying my zipper, so I've got it face down on this side of the jacket. Now I've had to turn mine over at the top because I couldn't get the exact size I wanted for this hoodie that I've done, because obviously I've copied this off a shop bought one. So I've just turned it over and I'm going to remove some of those teeth after. I've just tacked it there so I don't catch it. Do be careful with metal teeth that you don't catch it with your needle. So here's the finished hoodie. I've got the white cord in at the minute. I am thinking I may change that. I'm going to see what he thinks. If he doesn't like the white cord, then I will change it for a blue one. That's easy enough to do. I just need to rethread it, which is quick enough to do if you use a pin or a bodkin, like I said. So, and I ordered this zip. So I finished it this morning because this zip just arrived this morning. So I got it to this point yesterday and then I've just popped the zip in just now. I'm pleased with this. It's a nice strong zip. Everything lines up nicely and it's a good thick hoodie, so I'm hoping he's going to be really pleased with that. Well, I hope you've enjoyed sewing along. I hope that made it simple to copy a hoodie, sweatshirt hoodie, and that you'll have a go at this. I find it's really easy to copy clothes that you already have if you just take your time, just lay them out and just copy the pieces. Just allow a little extra on the seams, and then if you get them a little bit tight, if they're a little bit loose, it's always easier to take them in a little bit. If you cut the seams too small, obviously there's nothing you can do. Well, there is sometimes, but it makes it so much harder. So just take your time, maybe practice on some inexpensive fabric to begin with, and then when you're a little bit more confident, you can try it on your more expensive fabrics. So that's all from me for today. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment if you enjoyed this, and I will be back soon. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.